What's up, everybody? Spare with a Gun here from Sleepless Nights with a fairly different episode for this episode of the Space Engineers Inspiration series. This is celebrating our 200th episode, so I wanted to do something a little bit more unique and different, and kind of do a trip down memory lane, similar to what I did with my Elite Dangerous series, which seemed to be received relatively well. However, I was originally going to do this with a bit more of like a fly-through kind of thing, like show each build and do like a cinematic fly-through all of them and stuff, and then do a post-commentary over the top of them talking about why I liked that build. But what I ran into was, it kind of reminded me of how long I've been doing this series, because half of them they either didn't load right, were broken, or the mods and stuff don't work anymore. Anyways, half of them were either stuck in a loading screen, they wouldn't load right, or when they loaded were missing pieces, blah blah blah. Long story. So I opted to kind of split it down the middle, where I still wanted to talk about some of these builds because the designs and creativity of them still hold up very well. And they're still very, very cool builds, but I can't really load them and show them very much anymore. I did include the links mainly for you guys that if you see any of them that you think are cool, that you can jump to that page and you can, read the descriptions more thoroughly, go through the screenshots, whatever you want, or try and load them, because some of them no doubt work. But I was like, I'd been trying to record for almost a half an hour and I'd only got like 2 or 3's builds footage done because I couldn't get them to load right or they took forever. So what I opted to do as kind of a compromise is I'm going to throw up a kind of a slideshow from screenshots that I grabbed off of their workshop file and then kind of discuss them and point out a couple of points that are the reason they stuck in my head, or why I thought they were very creative. A couple of these were suggested through comments, but there wasn't enough comments and enough consistency or uniformity, like unanimous decisions kind of thing, so I opted to kind of pick mostly what I remember as being like, oh, these are like my all-time favorite builds. I'm considering doing something like a Hall of Fame collection for these or something, and then adding to them later when we do more events like this and milestone episodes, things like that. But for now, it'll just be this episode where it just lists the links. They are in the new SKS Space Engineers Inspiration Series collection on the workshop for Space Engineers. For those of you that aren't aware, I'm starting to add that link in the description of my inspiration videos now, so that each video does have a link to the full collection of the inspiration episodes, and then when I'm doing more builds in the episodes, I'm adding those as I add them to the series. So keep that in mind. Now it'll be a lot easier to find all of the builds that I've ever done. So let's get things started, shall we? So I'll start off with a user or a viewer selection, the Dawnstar Train. This was actually, if I remember correctly, and I'm going to probably reference things that may or may not be accurate, it's just how I remember them. So it may not be right, but, bear with me. But from my perspective, my understanding, this was one of the first builds that really was super creative in making a kind of train system that didn't, break apart and shatter. And it also was one of the first ones to try and do that, vertical wheel style, which is kind of the precursor to the new wheel hover mechanic that some people have done now. But yeah, it was kind of ahead of its time, in my opinion, that it was one of the first ones that really showed what you could do with wheels and things, and actually was stable. That's the big thing. A lot of people did builds like this and stuff, or tried to, but they just weren't that reliable or stable. This was one of the first ones where it was like the train would stay on the track kind of thing, and it would do cool stuff. So yeah, I really did like this pick. This was a good one. Because it's very creative and it was very innovative in that a lot of people were building spaceships and flying vessels. This was one of the few ones that not only did ground, but actually tried to do a rail kind of system, and did it very well, especially for its time. The next one, there's no way I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but what else is new? the 17 Shiki Morito? I don't know. Morito? I don't know. This one is still one of my favorite builds. It doesn't function as well anymore. I did get the world to load, but I had trouble getting into the build because of where the cockpit position is in the chest. It's under the head, and it was hard to get to. It does actually load, though. But this was really cool because we've seen mechs and stuff before, but as you can see in a couple of the screenshots, this one was a lot more controllable. You could really pose it and stuff, which was very, very different. Most of them were more mech warrior mechs that, you know, the arms bent and things, but they really weren't like a Gundam anime kind of style. And this one, it does, I believe, use some mods. I think there was some ramp mods and stuff involved. I'm not sure. But it was heavily more focused on like the design and movability and posability, whereas a lot of the mechs on the workshop were a bit more geared towards the functionality. Like it was supposed to be a mech walker, builder, grinder, you know, assault vehicle kind of thing. This one was a lot more about style, particularly the hands. I found the hands to be very well done and very different from most of the builds, but again, much like the train, it wasn't that there haven't been mech attempts before, but I still think this was probably one of the most functional in its time. Like I said, it's a little bit outdated at this point. Probably could use an update for it to fully function correctly. But it was still done very well, and it actually had the most posability and stuff, which I thought was really, really cool. All right, so this next one is, you can tell in the title, both in the description and in the workshop file, it's the builder has labeled it that it doesn't work anymore, and I could not get the world file to load at all, so there's that. But I still think it's one of my favorite steampunk designs. There's 2 or 3 other ones on the workshop. Actually, I don't think any of them work anymore that were in the collection for the Inspiration series, but I think this one was the most unique. The other 2 were more like ships, and this was more of like a blimp, hence the name. And it was really, really, really eye-catching to me. Still is. I mean, it still is like, wow, that still looks really good kind of thing. Because it was a world file, I don't remember. I think there was mods involved, because in some of the screenshots you can see some of the pipes and things like that that aren't vanilla blocks, but it just worked so well, and it just pulled off the steampunk look. There was all these like pipes and scaffolding type things, incomplete stuff, a lot of frameworks and things. The design and taper shape to the blimp worked really well. It really does look like a balloon from a distance. You don't see it quite as jaggy as it is. So for a steampunk style build and stuff, I was very impressed with how well this one actually captured the steampunk vibe, even in Space Engineers, which is a little bit more, I guess, industrial kind of feeling typically. It doesn't usually have quite so artsy of a feel. But yeah, this one was and still is very impressive to me. Okay, so next up we have the Acheron class. I'm gonna say that. Yet again, another more form over function kind of thing. I'm not entirely sure how practical the build actually is, but I was always very impressed by this being able to do something like this. That's what a lot of these picks were from, was that then when they first came out and I featured them in the Inspiration series, and still to this day, I still look at some of these and am just floored that somebody actually figured out how to do something like that in Space Engineers. It's one thing when you have an artist or with a pen or a 3D modeler with stuff like Blender and Maya being able to just come up with something and make it. That's impressive enough, but to be able to make it within the confines of a game that has specific rules about what blocks can be placed where, how much space can there be, it never ceases to amaze me when people do these really impressive, artistic, and very unique builds. I do think that in the description and stuff, it mentions that it's mostly survival ready and stuff, but it's not really like recommended for that. It was more of a proof of concept of design type of thing, and it definitely succeeds with that. All the little tendrils and arms and stuff is just, it's crazy to me how that was done. Okay, and one of my favorites. This one just cracks me up. It just gets me every time. Planet Christmas. I featured it once or twice in different Christmas episode specials of the Inspiration series. But yeah, this one got me every time because it's like this village kind of thing, and they even did the snow in Santa's workshop, and they used the mods to get the trees and the candy canes and all that kind of stuff. It's just fun and festive kind of thing. Most everybody was building ships and all this kind of stuff, and then you get, kind of a goofy Christmas village kind of thing. And I love the mods to make the little elves and the big tall giant people and stuff. It was kind of hilarious seeing like this little, I don't know, I guess you'd put an equivalent to like a little dwarf midget space engineer character kind of running around. It was like, this is adorable. And like I said, even including the workshop thing where like the presents were made and it like ends up being these little boxes kind of thing is really funny. So yeah, I've always found this one to be kind of a special one, not because it's super like difficult to build something like that. It was just creative and fun, I thought. Okay, and this one is probably still one of the biggest builds that I've ever looked at before. This ship is huge. It doesn't always look like it in the screenshots, but I remember this ship ate my computer when I tried to load it the first time, like when it was actually featured in the episode in the Inspiration series. But the Prometheus, I believe, I'm not 100% positive, but I believe this was a recreation from the movie Prometheus. I could be misspeaking there, but I'm pretty sure it is. But blown away at the level of detail mixed with the size ratio kind of thing. Like a lot of the bigger builds sacrifice a little bit of detail most often, sometimes for performance, because they can't fit all that detail in there without making the build more complicated. So the bigger ships tend to be not quite so detailed. And this one had full VTOL arm controls and stuff that would shift. It was crazy. And at some point I probably will try and load this one back up just to see if my newer system can handle it a little better. But I remember specifically having to kind of briefly go over this one, but couldn't really fully walk through the whole thing in the episode because it was basically a slideshow. But and I know the design is, if I'm correct, I know the design is based off of a movie design, so it's not 100% original, but still, again, kind of taking a design and getting it to fit in Space Engineers is impressive in and of itself sometimes. Okay, and this one, I don't know how I'm supposed to say it. Brynhildr? I'm not sure. This one was very unique to me. I like different kinds of spaceships. Like, you tend to see a lot of the same designs where this is where the engine room is, and this is where the bridge is, and then you get designs like this, where it's just weird. It's like, whoa, where did this come from? This looks odd, They're just abstract, and it makes you go, huh, I wonder how they came up with that one, kind of thing. Like, it's difficult to explain, but it's one of those designs to me that when you see it, you're like, hey, that's really cool. But I would have never thought of it before seeing it, and somebody had to. And that part always impresses me with builds like this, but I love the rings on this ship. I guess in some ways it could have been a precursor to some of my own designs that I'm currently working on in the Let's Build series of adding like these ring-like shapes with windows and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've always liked this ship. I thought it was really, really cool. It's supposed to be like a luxury yacht, if my memory serves. And I've always liked that aspect too, that I've always thought it would be cool to get to a point in space travel where it's no longer like just NASA, or like in Star Trek, it's not just the Federation, but you get to like these, not like military or science vessels, but you get to like leisure vessels, cruise liners and cruise ships and yachts and things like that. But instead of looking out at the ocean, you look out at space. And I've always thought traveling through space with the luxury of like a cruise liner or a yacht would just be epic. So when I see these yacht type builds and things, I'm like, hee, this is cool. Like it'd be awesome to be at a point in your, where you could just walk around on your space yacht and look out at space and stuff while you're, in your, I don't know, in your bathrobe, sitting on the lawn chair, looking out the window, sipping coffee or something. It's like I'm all the comforts of home and I'm out in space. So yeah. And plus the unique design with this, with all the rings and things, I just thought it was really cool. This next one I think needs no introduction for anybody that was born in the 80s because it's Unicron. I mean, now grant you, there's going to be some people that know who Unicron is still, but heaven forbid it's from the new Last Night movie because it's the worst. Anyways, I can do a whole podcast on that. But let's not take away from the majesty of this build in its 1980s glory, and by sidelining it and talking about the abysmal Last Night movie. So let's look at this build, which is definitely a 80s inspired, Transformers the movie Unicron, which is the best Unicron, obviously. It's voiced by Orson Welles. How do you get better? Anyways, so I really like this one. Again, kind of the being able to pull it off is I think the most impressive part to me. It wasn't just that someone with this would be cool, it's that it was actually done and done relatively well. Like I said, this is an older build, so maybe with some of the newer blocks you could make it a little more polished or something, but at the time when like the 2x1 ramps and all that kind of stuff weren't in the game, this was very impressive, and I found it most impressive that it functioned. I thought that was a really nice touch, that you can actually grind down ships and stuff like that. And I don't think the pincers move, but I thought it was really cool that it could actually look like Unicron was eating a planet like he does in the movie. I think that literally was the most impressive thing, that somebody did something so accurate, to design it that way, and then actually made it work. It wasn't just supposed to be for show kind of thing. I thought that was really, really neat. I think that honestly the only two things I can think of that would make this build better is updating it with some of the newer blocks to maybe make it a bit smoother. And then having a version that transformed would be amazing, but I feel like that might require a whole different game than Space Engineers to do that. But so it might just be from the nostalgia or what, but I was like, as soon as this hit the workshop, I was like, yes, this is getting featured. This is awesome. And I still think it is. Alright, now this one was actually, I believe, done for a contest, according to the title. I believe it was done for one of the Keen Software House exploring vessel contests or something. Maybe. I don't know. I could be misspeaking, don't quote me on that. But the Perseus, I think is what it's called, is probably one of my favorite builds. It's hard to actually point a finger like this is my all-time favorite, but it's close. I love this build. And I should have probably mentioned this before, but I'm not doing these in any particular order of most least favorite to most favorite or anything like that. I'm just kind of listing them off as I ran across them and put them in the list. But I love this build for a couple of reasons. One, I have to admit the uniformity of theme is perfect in this build. Everything has the right, it pulls from the same color palette, same base, same accent colors throughout the entire build. You've got these stripes and markings that work really well with the accent colors and things to really give it a very distinct. It's like, this honestly looks like a ship I could see in a show or something. It doesn't look like, hey, I just built something or whatever. It looks fully fleshed out. The walls, the decorum, everything just works so well. I love this build. I think there was an updated version of it that I featured later in a further episode. This was the original build. But even still, either version of them, I fell in love with this design. The design is cool. I love the design part of it, and I love how being built on I believe it was a small grid ship, everything was kind of tightly packed together. All the stairways and stuff had a lot of detail and striping, and there's like no wasted space at all. Everything was not the YouTuber, but there was like no white space. We'll call it that. It was like everything was taken to use in some way to add to the build. But just the layout in and of itself is really cool. But I love how the theme and color scheme and everything just fit together, and it's carried through the entire ship design. It wasn't just like a hodgepodge of different ideas. It was like one kind of style through the whole thing, and it just works. It's still probably one of my favorite ones. And speaking of favorite ones, here we have another personal favorite of mine, the Jolly Roger. Obviously, who doesn't want a space pirate ship? That's just cool, But much like the Perseus that we just talked about, this one had a pretty cool theme that fit through the whole ship design, even having the bow have a skull and the teeth have basically the airtight hangar where you'd fly a fighter into or something. So being the hangar doors is like the teeth and stuff. The thruster pods being the crossbones. It has a uniform theme throughout the whole ship, which is really cool. I do think, again, this is a fairly older build, though. I mean, it's been around for a couple years. And I think one of the cool things about it was, again, being able to put something artsy into the ship design and actually make it work in the game mechanics, like putting the skull and the face on the bow and the crossbones and all that. It's one thing to think about it, but finding a way to make it work in the game and actually look cool it's another story. So yeah, I've always liked this one. I mean, again, when you're in a game about exploring and space travel and all that, pirate ship, how can you go wrong with a pirate ship? It's just cool. Now this one I featured because there's basically two. For any of you interested that are just kind of tuning in or have just been introduced to the Inspiration series, there's basically two things I look at when I pick things for my Inspiration series. One is visual design. Is there something that's striking about it that's like the Perseus or something, that it has a really cool color scheme, everything works, it's designed really neat, very high quality visuals that go, ooh, that's cool. Or function. Does it do something that's abstract or abnormal from what you would typically do in the functions of the Space Engineers game, like in Survival or something? This one has a little bit of both, but it's primarily the function side. I thought the ability to transform, really cool. Again, it's been the bread and butter of the entire series of Transformers, which is why that series is so popular. Everybody likes things that transform. It's just cool. So this one being able to start as kind of like a shuttle-looking ship, and then, I would call it a blossom effect, but it's titled a White Star, so I guess it may not work the same way, but, it kind of just unfolds, and now you get this star kind of ship. I thought that was really, really cool, and again, this is a little bit of a dated build, and so at the time, this kind of behavior and stuff was not really common. At least in my experience of keeping an eye on the workshop and stuff, I didn't see a whole lot of ships that would try and do stuff or would do it to that degree. You'd get people that would try and make something work, but it was kind of janky or something. And usually when I featured them on my series, it was because they worked really well or they did something really cool. And I kind of like the fact that the wings, or I don't know what they would be called on a star, but I'm going to go with wings, arms maybe, had the solar panels in them. I thought was a cool effect, because then it would be like, hey, we need power, and it would open up, and then you could capture solar energy, and then it'd fold back up, that kind of thing. So I thought it was really cool, very, very interesting design, and I was surprised at how well the transformation part actually worked. Alright, now this one was a bit harder to get some good screenshots from, mainly because there wasn't a lot on the workshop file, but also because it's a darker ship on a darker background, so it was a little hard to get a good read. But this was the Hyperion. I remember this ship distinctly because it's a huge ship. It's big. And it was another one, I tend to remember the builds that went so, like, go for broke kind of thing, like they went so high in their goal, that they tended to, like, break machines and everybody had a hard time running them kind of thing. This was one of those, to me. It also had a really cool feature that I don't know if it showed up very well in the screenshots, but it has this kind of blue glowing barrel nose kind of shape that I thought was a very big eye-catching kind of, looked like, I don't remember if it was a cannon in the actual build or not, because I haven't actually walked through it in a while, but walked through it? That's not, I don't think that's the proper term you're supposed to use for that, but you guys get what I mean. So I haven't actually looked at it in a while, but I can't remember if it actually would fire anything or not, but it looked like it. It looked like one of those ships that, you know, should be shooting some kind of beam at you out of the barrel of the out of the front of the nose, which I always thought was cool. So there's that, but it was a huge, massive ship. It's got a lot of armor plating to it, kind of thing. So it was definitely a big battleship kind of build, which was very impressive. Okay, and this was the Hoya. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to say it, but I can't help myself. I'll watch Master of Disguise too many times. Hoya! Gotta dance. This was another one of those function over form type ships for me that the transforming effect was just like, huh? It can do what? It was, I believe, primarily more of an exploration ship. I don't think it was very well armed or anything like that. But it had the ability to kind of like open up or expand or transform kind of thing. And if I recall correctly, it would actually shift the way the thrusters worked. And so you had this kind of like full thruster mode type of thing. It would like open up more thrusters or something. It was either that or it was more of a VTOL. I can't remember exactly, but it had me as soon as it transformed. I was like, okay, it transforms. I'm good. That's cool. But yeah, it was a really again, it was an example of transformation and mechanics that were done really well. It wasn't just, hey, this would be cool, so it's a proof of concept, but it was like really polished. It worked really well. You could click a button and it would just unfold into this new design, which was very impressive to me. So I always thought this one was really neat. Alright, and this one is probably one of the biggest builds I've ever featured on my on the Inspiration series, and I don't even remember if it ran very well at all, but this is the Sandberg. I'm gonna call it that. Sandberg, something like that. I can't recall, I believe it didn't have much of a description, but it always kind of reminded me of Halo. It had kind of a Covenant design to it, or a Scorponok kind of design for the original 80s Transformer fans out there. But yeah, this was a huge ship, massive ship, and it had there had to have been a ton of work that went into it to get this kind of like, I'm calling it a scorpion design just because that's what it kind of looks like. It has the long tail with like a point on the end of it. It has the little pincer things. It just reminds me of Scorponok from the old Transformer series, so that's what I kind of call it. But just the design of the hull probably took forever. And then to make it actually work and function, and it could fly, believe it or not. I don't know how the thing flew. The thing was massive, but it can fly. But yeah, it was another one of those just gigantic, like somebody just went for the goalpost kind of thing. I don't know if that's a phrase or not. I'm not much of a sports person, but I feel like I've heard that somewhere. But yeah, it was going for broke. Let's go with that. They were going for broke on this build. It was like, we're swinging for the fence post. That's the phrase I was. Moving on. Alright, and this one is actually a fairly new build, but it's still really impressive to me, and this is the Iridescent Sea Turtle. The main reason this is impressive to me is from a distance, the thing looks freaking realistic. Obviously when you get up close, you can see the blocks of from Space Engineers, but from a distance, you could think it was a sea turtle out in space, because it just it looks that way. I mean, the fins and everything, but I cannot get over the coloring of the build. I don't know how it was done. I'd like to think it was some kind of 3D modeling program. Because if you had to do that in vanilla, in Space Engineers, not even vanilla, but just in Space Engineers to paint it block at a time and stuff like that, there's so many color variants on the shell and everything to make it look so realistic that it would take freaking forever. And so I don't know how that was done, but it never ceases to impress me. I was also very impressed with the jaw mechanic, that the jaw actually works really well. And again, it's kind of a fully functioning thing. It's not like just some kind of hatch or whatever. The jaw actually retracts and moves and stuff so that it works a bit more realistically. Plus, I've said it in the inspiration episode, I said it in the reverse engineering episode where I tried to take it apart. It has nostril lights. What more do you want in a build than nostril lights? Alright, so now I am getting a little bit more specific at this point. This is probably my personal top 5 favorites. I probably should have included the Perseus somewhere in here, but I kind of forgot about it until just now. So, but yeah, these are probably moving a bit more into my top 5 all-time favorites. The first is the Spherical RS12. I hope I'm saying that right. The reasoning behind this being one of my top favorites is because to me it looks like something ripped straight out of Star Wars. I mean, no tampering necessary, no additives required, no tweaking, if you look at the hull of the ship, it just to me looks like something out of Star Wars. It looks like a combination of a TIE fighter and the Sith Interceptor that Maul uses in Episode 1 or something, but it's just awesome looking. I love the design of this ship. I love the free floating look of the orb in the center. I know it's not actually free floating and it's attached, but it kind of looks like it's detached from the rest of the ship. I like the cockpit. I like the little arm positioning and the frame around it. I really like this ship. I also like how they used color, again, kind of like the Perseus, to highlight different areas and make certain things look like one's the base, one's the outer hull frame, and one's kind of the internal mechanics of it kind of thing. I like how they did that. But yeah, it's not any one particular thing that's just unique about it, other than maybe the design, but it just looks really cool. I've just always liked that design of that ship. So yeah, that's probably number 5, I'd say. And the next one on my top 5 is the Solar Energy sailing ship Caroline. The reason I like this ship so much is because I do like when people try to take the old and update it to new. So it's kind of based on like a colonial sailing ship, not like a traditional spaceship like an Enterprise or a Star Destroyer or something, or even something like what NASA has. It's more like, let's take an old sailing ship and put it out in space. Love that idea, but very few of those builds have actually pulled it off to this level of detail. I've never seen a sailing ship design that is this integrated. And what I mean by that is, most of them, they can be highly detailed, but then they really just look like a straight-up sailing ship in Space Engineers that's flying. This one actually looks like what would happen if you tried to take a sailing ship design and update it to a spaceship. That's what I like so much about this design, is that it kind of looks like a hybrid between the old and the new. And there's a lot of different places here and there that add a lot of detail. So it's not just like an empty deck, kind of thing. There's stuff on the deck. There's stuff in the hull, I think. Actually, I don't remember if there is a hull in this, or an interior in this one. I think you actually just have a flight seat, but the sails and all that, it just has all kinds of detail work done to it that makes it look super polished. And it kind of seems like something I could see if they actually tried to make a space sail ship type of thing. So it's always been kind of a personal favorite of mine. Alright, next up we have the Undying, and this was a I guess it's a successor to the Jolly Roger because it's made by the same builder, Artist X, I believe. And in the description of this one, it did mention that it started out as kind of a Jolly Roger 2 and sort of turned into its own ship. This, to me, if I had to describe it to somebody without seeing it, I would say it looks like taking the Jolly Roger and smashing it with Warhammer's style kind of thing. The yellow and the black. We saw that not too long ago in the Inspiration series with the Hammer of Orion build. And it's still got the same kind of black and yellow color scheme. You got the peaks, the cathedral style. I can't say, I don't think in the description it mentions it, so I can't say if there was actually like Warhammer intentionally, or if it was just kind of an accidental coincidence. But it definitely looks like a Warhammer style build, which honestly, I've never really played Warhammer, but I love the builds. I love the ships that they have. The ships look really different, really cool. Again, really good use of like color and accent colors and themes and stuff to kind of keep it really uniform throughout the whole build. But I like the skulls on the thruster pods and the big skull masked helmet face kind of thing on the front. I think it's really cool looking. Now this particular one is the one I featured in the Inspiration episode back in the day. I guess I think this one looks like it came out in February of this year, so it's probably not too long ago, but it was probably quite a few episodes ago. But I don't know if there's a newer version of this, because it is marked as a pre-release, so I don't know if there's a new version of this or not. I probably should look into that, because I really, really do like this build. Alright, so probably my second favorite one is more of a concept than actually, like, appearance. It's not that it does anything that looks super slick or special or anything, but it's a concept design that I think is so cool, and it's the Cohab Living Sphere. This one, it just blew my mind. When I saw it on the workshop, I was like, what? What is this? What's going on? It's a really cool idea. It's like this, it's basically like a colony that's movable. Like the outer frame of the circle is where the thrusters and stuff are, that it can fly around, but then there's all these modules inside that, for exploration and science and living quarters and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, that is a cool looking colony space station kind of look to it. And I really like that it's mobile too, that it's not even like a space station as much as it is kind of like a colony or a really, really, really big ship kind of thing. But I've always been fascinated with this idea of some kind of abstract looking. It's not just like a cylinder or a circle or something like Deep Space Nine, where it's just a ring or something like that. It's legitimately like a rounded sphere, and then everybody lives on the inside of it. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. So this particular one has always kind of stood out to me. And now, the number one pick, my top number one favorite ship of all time-ish. I mean, I never like actually nailing myself. Anyways, the number one most favorite on this list, the top of the Hall of Fame, is the FNS Dopey. I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce that, but it's a flying coffee cup. Okay, no, I'm actually kidding. I just thought that would be really funny. Not that that's not a cool design, and it's definitely unique, but it is a flying coffee cup. But no, my number one, if I had to pick, I think my number one favorite that's always stuck with me, I've always been a fan of this, is the Sky Edge 2. Now, technically, this is a newer version, but I fell in love with the original Sky Edge version when it first came out and I first found it. But the second one is just even better, so I ended up picking that one. I did feature this one not too far back in the Inspiration series, but again, it's been a favorite of mine since the first version, so it was like, oh, hello, better version of that fan favorite of mine. But yeah, I love this ship. Pretty much everything about it. I can't think of very many things that I don't like about this ship. I love the bridge and observation area. It's got a huge open view, but the bridge and stuff is still very highly detailed. The interior reminds me the most of the Millennium Falcon or something similar to that I've ever seen in an original build. Most every build that comes that close to that style and that vibe is typically like a Millennium Falcon rebuild kind of thing, or a recreation or something. So for this to be in a unique ship and feature that kind of interior, I love it. The hull is awesome to me. It's very highly detailed, and it's got a super sleek and very sci-fi kind of vibe to it, but it's still highly detailed. I'm not sure if the entire build is a small ship grid or if they use kind of a hybrid grid kind of thing. But it's still got a ton of detail work done all throughout the entire build, outside, inside, everywhere. It's just very detailed. And the screenshots, there were no screenshots of it. I wanted to kind of feature it, but it has one of the coolest, I don't know what the actual term would be. I guess astronomics room or astronomy room or something like that. It's basically a star map room where the ceiling is just all glass. You can actually see it in one of the screenshots. It's that circle in the middle in the V section of the front of the ship. But it's got this glass dome overhead where you can just look out into space. It's got a white glowing floor from the LCD screens. And then there's just like these floating planet projections all around. It's kind of like a Cerebro looking kind of room. Really cool. I was blown away by that. But I think if I had to pick out the three big things outside of just the hull design and the interior design and all that kind of stuff being so well done, but like three key features of the build that make me so excited about it, it would be the elevator. It has like a multi-floor elevator, but it's more like a cargo platform, and it's one of the smoothest ones I've ever seen done. And it really doesn't have that many mods. I think it has a thruster mod, and that's it. So the elevator is actually like a vanilla style, which is crazy. The Astro room, the Sky, I can't think of the right name. Star Map room. Let's just go with that. The Star Map room is mind-blowing, and the bridge is just one of the most phenomenal bridges I've ever seen on a build. So if I had to pick, this would probably be my top favorite one in terms of all around quality and appeal. There's some that, like, I don't think it's very well armed or something, so I probably wouldn't take it into like a battle scene. But as far as what do you think is the most inspiring, impressive, blah blah blah, I would have to go with the Sky Edge 2. So anyways, I think that's going to wrap things up for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. It was a little bit different, I know. I would have rather liked to actually walk through and fly through the builds, but this was the best way I could think to keep a uniform level of quality without having some be a little bit wonky or weird or something. This way everything was kind of the same level playing field. I did include links in the description for all of these builds. However, like I said, some of them don't work or aren't working without some finagling. So bear that in mind, but they're still definitely worth looking at if you're looking for something to really spark your creativity. But yeah, so this was kind of, I know this was a little bit different and it kind of messes with the flow of my typical release schedule, but hopefully the next episode will be kind of back to the more usual way of doing things. But I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, kind of going back and taking a trip down memory lane and looking at a bunch of cool different builds. I do want to say the Inspiration series is my probably most viewed series on my channel at this point. So it's where I usually connect with most of my viewers and subscribers and stuff. So I do want to say a special shout out for thank you guys for supporting the channel and everything, whether it's through Patreon or just views and subscriptions or comments or feedback. Any of that is all necessary and welcome. And so I would like to say thank you guys for all that and helping to actually reach 200 episodes, because I wouldn't have kept, I've canceled series before when they're not pulling you guys in or not intriguing the viewership kind of thing. So the fact that we got to 200 episodes and it's still one of my number one series on my channel, it means a lot to know, that people are really looking for it kind of thing and look forward to these episodes and things like that. It's kind of a confidence booster and a motivator. I've had even times where I myself didn't find the Inspiration series to be my favorite series because it was a little bit of, you kind of had to think a little bit more, had to analyze a bit more rather than just playing a game and having fun. But it was that motivation and that craving that I keep getting from people about like, oh, when's the next one coming out? No, this is another great, it keeps me going and keeps me doing this kind of stuff. So I do want to say thanks to all of you guys who have supported the series, especially all of those that have been watching ever since like the first episode or further back. All that means a lot. So with that, we're going to wrap things up here for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and I will see you all next time. Peace.